Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation, Camaplan Self-Directed 101. My name is William Mucker. I'm a client executive here with Camaplan. We put these together weekly, these little events weekly to let you guys join us and go over the basics of self-direction. Before we get started, there's a brief disclosure to go over. This is just basically saying that us at Camaplan, we're not attorneys, tax professionals, financial advisors, or anything like that. Everything in this presentation is for educational purposes only. If you need advice in any one of those fields, we highly recommend that you speak to one of those professionals, and you're more than welcome to have them join a conference call or an email thread with us to make sure everything's structured the way that best fits your goals. And without further ado, let's get started. So things we'll go over today are, again, the basics. So what is a self-directed IRA? What accounts can be self-directed? What investments can be made out of a self-directed IRA, and how the process works a little bit. And then we'll touch on some tax considerations at the end for you to take to your tax professional and discuss. So what is a self-directed IRA or retirement account? So you can go to Schwab or Fidelity or TD Ameritrade or Vanguard or any one of those big brokers and say, and they may tell you that you have a self-directed IRA, but what they mean is they have a list that you can direct your funds into. With a truly self-directed IRA like the ones offered at Camaplan, there is no list. You find the alternative investment that's right for you, and we help facilitate the transaction into that IRA. But in reality, self-directed is just an adjective. All of the accounts that we have at Camaplan can be self-directed, and it just means that you can put these investments or these retirement funds into these alternative investments. This is a quote from one of our clients: investing in what you know, understand, and can control versus using hope as your strategy. Hope is something that's more commonly used with the stock market because you're hoping that a company on Wall Street performs well, and then you get you get earnings from that. With the alternative investments held within a self-directed IRA, they're a little bit more tangible, and you can more so control the outcome based off of your prior knowledge with alternative investments. So what type of accounts can be self-directed? Like I said in one of the first slides, self-directed is just an adjective. These are the accounts that you actually open up with a custodian, a self-directed custodian like Camaplan. So you have two different types of buckets. You have your tax-deferred and your tax-free bucket. Tax-deferred accounts means you're not paying taxes on the contributions you put in the account, but years down the line, when you want to take a distribution from that account at an eligible age, you're going to be paying taxes on that distribution amount. That includes the initial contributions and the earnings. Now, on the other end, you have the tax-free accounts where the contributions are taxed, but years down the line at an eligible age, when you go to take that distribution, those initial contributions and earnings that you want to take out of the account are tax-free. So we like to phrase it: would you rather pay the taxes on the seed or the crop? With the Roth IRAs and the tax-free IRAs, you're more so paying on the seed, and with the traditional or tax-deferred IRAs, you're more so paying on the crop. So in the tax-deferred bucket, you have your traditional IRA, you have the spousal IRA, which is a little bit confusing on the slide. A spousal IRA can actually also be tax-free. Spousal just means if you have a working spouse and a non-working spouse, the working spouse can contribute on behalf of the non-working spouse, and that can be a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. But more tax-deferred accounts we have are the SEP IRA, Simplified Employee Pension Plan IRA, and then the Simple IRA, which is a savings incentives match plan for employers. Those are employer-linked plans, of course, for small businesses and self-employed individuals. And then you also have the defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans, which are some more employer plans. And then on the other hand, you have your tax-free bucket, your Roth IRA, your health savings account, which is the only account of its type where the contributions are tax deferred, and if for an eligible medical expense, the distributions are also tax-free. More tax-free accounts are the educational savings account or Coverdell and the Roth portion of the 401ks. So what's the difference between an IRA and a 401k? All the investments you can make out of an IRA, you can make out of 401k, but the main differences are generally the contribution limits, and the 401ks are the only type of retirement plan you can take a personal loan from. It has to be either $50,000 or 50%, whichever of those two amounts are less. And then UDFI rules don't apply to the solo 401k, where they do apply to the self-directed or IRA in general. We'll go over UDFI towards the end of the presentation when we talk about some tax considerations. So keep that in mind. So this is earnings through different avenues of investments, and what do you get to keep through those different avenues. So you have your W-2 income. You earn $100,000. What do you get to keep? So you're paying federal, state, local. You're paying Social Security, Medicare taxes. Your employer is also paying taxes. So out of that $100,000 in this scenario, you're earning only about $60,000. 40% of that is going to Uncle Sam to help him keep the lights on. And this will vary depending on your location specifically, but on average, it's going to be about 40% that's going to taxes. And then you have your passive income, which is taxed a little bit less. You're not paying those Social Security or Medicare, and you're not paying employer taxes. So in this scenario, again, this will vary. You're only paying about $75,000 or $25,000 in taxes, and you're walking away with $75,000. Excuse me. Then you have your tax deferred and tax free accounts, where those $100,000 that you earn, you get to keep. However, there's an asterisk next to the tax deferred account, because when you want to take that out of the account, you're going to actually be taxed at that amount at the time of distribution. This is another visual that you can use. This is $50,000 invested over 40 years at a 10% rate of return in a 30% tax bracket. This is what you'll get to keep. So the blue is the taxable income, the green is your tax deferred income, and the dark green is your tax-free income. So over 40 years towards the end, you can see that the W-2 only earns about $700,000. It's important to note that the light green and dark green tax deferred and tax-free both earned $2.2 million. However, when you went to take the distribution of that tax deferred funds, you're paying about $700,000 in taxes on that 2.2 million. So you're only walking away with about 1.5 million. We have a question coming in that I'll answer now. How do I connect with fellow Camel Plan SDIRA holders? I invest in real estate and like to partner with those who are looking for investment vehicles for their IRAs and other funds. So that's a great question. So we have different ways for you to connect. We don't really broker deals or tell anybody what to invest in. So we're present at a lot of investor meetups. So whether it's one of the RIAs, the Real Estate Investment Association events, or we also do webinars with different investment providers and different professionals in the industry that may have investments to offer. And then we always recommend that you do your own due diligence, but you can choose to invest with those individuals or companies if you choose to. Those are the two of the ways that you can go about it. Again, we don't really broker any deals, but if you have any questions about that, or if you have material that you'd like to present, educational material, please let us know, and we can see if we can have you present for us. So thank you for the question. So what types of investments can be made out of an IRA, or self-directed IRA, excuse me? This is one of the biggest questions we get. So the main things we see our clients invest into are real estate, and we'll be touching on each of these a little bit more in the future slides, but real estate, private lending through notes and mortgages, private placements of privately traded companies, precious metals, and other. So you're not limited to these. I've seen people buy sheep and sell the wool. I've seen people invest in trees and sell the fruit. I've seen people buy bees and sell the honey. So the options are really endless as long as you follow the prohibited transactions guidelines, which we will also go over in one of the future slides. So stay tuned. So to start off, real estate. Your IRA is a separate entity from you, similar to a trust. So your IRA can actually go out and purchase properties, sell properties. They don't have to be residential. They could be commercial. They could be single family. They can be multifamily. It could be an undeveloped plot of land that your IRA owns. Whatever you're more familiar with, you're more comfortable with, that you think you're going to be able to earn the most money from, your IRA can actually go out and do that for you. And it doesn't have to be domestic. It can also be foreign investments that you make with the self-directed IRA. However, you should be aware of that country's rules and laws and whether or not they recognize the LLC as an investor. So the U.S. LLC, excuse me. So something to keep in mind. Next up, we have private lending. So your IRA can actually be a bank as well. So, and be a lender on different notes. It can be unsecured or secured. I mean, most people do secured unless whatever reason you're okay with it being unsecured. That security can be a mortgage or whatever you come to. They can be convertible notes that change into equity at a future time and at a specific marker. You don't have to originate the note, excuse me. You can buy that note on the secondary market. And again, your IRA is a separate entity from you, and that IRA can be a lender on these different types of loans or notes. Next up, we have private placement. So before Apple or Google or any of these big companies were publicly offered on the stock market, you wouldn't be able to invest in them directly unless it's through a privately traded instrument like the private placements. So your IRA can purchase shares of these privately traded companies, excuse me, and then they can earn dividends. There are different ways and structures that you can go about it. You can invest into LLCs, limited partnerships, trusts, corporations, joint ventures, all these different options. So if it's not publicly listed, it doesn't, and it's not on the stock market, you can still invest into it through one of these instruments. This is actually probably the most popular investment we see through Camel Plan, just because it's more passive, but any of these investments will work. Just depends on how you structure it and what your prior knowledge is. Another investment that's pretty popular at Camel Plan, especially recently, are precious metals, excuse me. So your IRA can buy and hold metals. You can't hold them personally as the account holder because that would be a prohibited transaction. They would actually be held with a depository that we would set up an account for you with. But your IRA can own gold. It can earn silver, palladium, platinum. Another option is the precious metals composite, which is an interesting combination of those four metals. And then it can also purchase certain coins and bullion. There are certain restrictions that we'll go over in the next slide when we actually talk about prohibited transactions, because it talks about metals, which is a little bit confusing, but you'll understand in just a moment. So we just talked about what your IRA can invest into. Now, what can't your IRA invest into? So basically, the IRS doesn't want your IRA to go out and invest into hard to value assets. So these mainly manifest into collectibles and life insurance. So works of art, they're hard to value because one person might say that that's worth $100 and one person might say that's worth $1 million. So they're hard to value. Antiques, metals, however, there's an exception, like I mentioned, for those U.S. government minted metals, that's gold or silver eagles, those bullions, they can be purchased. However, other metals can't. So they have to be minted by a certain U.S.-based mint with certain licenses. They have to meet a certain quality marker and a number of different things, but you just can't invest into any metal out of your IRA. Other things that are prohibited are the stamps and coins and alcoholic beverages. You can't go out and purchase wine directly. However, if a company has a private placement that they own or a fund that they go out and they do invest into these collectibles, you can invest into that. You just can't. Your IRA can't go out and directly purchase these things and invest in them directly, if that makes sense. Another thing that's prohibited by the IRS when you're making investments out of your IRA or 401k are there's no self-dealing, there's no personal use. So the way we look at it is if your IRA goes out and purchases a property, like I said earlier, the IRA is a separate entity from you, similar to a trust. Because the IRA is making that investment, your IRA is out there making that investment. You as the account holder cannot receive a direct benefit from that investment, nor can you provide a direct benefit to that investment. So when it comes to real estate, if your IRA went out and purchased that property, you as the account holder, you couldn't stay in that property at even one day out of the year. You wouldn't be able to stay in that property. So if you're going out there and purchasing a vacation home, you would only be able to rent that out. Your IRA would only be able to rent that out. You wouldn't be able to use that personally. You also can't go in there and do any sweat equity. So you can pick the color of the paint you want your IRA's house to be painted. You just can't go in there personally and paint the walls yourself because you're providing a benefit to that IRA. Whereas the IRA would have to go out and pay somebody who's going to charge a competitive price that will be paying taxes on their income to do that work. So not only are you as the account holder a prohibited person or a disqualified person to your IRA, There are a number of other people that are disqualified persons to your IRA as well. So this mainly is anybody of lineal ascent or descent of you, so parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, and any entity that these people own 50% or more of or have managing power of. So if you have, if your spouse has a painting company, your IRA can't go out and pay your spouse's company to paint the IRA's rental property. It would have to be a non-disqualified person. So it's mainly those people of lineal ascent or descent and any entity that they own or have managing power of. So the people in blue are disqualified on this chart, but the people in light green are okay. So they're more lateral relationships. So aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, nieces, nephews, they're all okay to either provide a benefit or receive a benefit from the IRA. I shouldn't say provide a benefit or receive a benefit. More so, they're allowed to rent from you or do work on the property in the form of real estate. So how does the process work? So it depends on the type of investment that you're going to make, but it's fairly simple. All of these steps, a lot of these steps are behind the scenes that you don't even have to do yourself. And this whole process, on average, from start to finish, I tell people to expect about 2 to 3 weeks, but we process on everything on our end within 2 business days of receiving paperwork in good order. So the first step is to open an account with Camel Plan. So you'll figure out what type of account you want to fund it from, and then you want to open a similar account to that at Camel Plan. So if you had a traditional IRA or a tax deferred account, like a tax deferred 401k you want to use to make the investment, you would open up a tax deferred account with Camel Plan. Then you would transfer it if it were from another IRA into the account here. We actually can do that on your behalf with a transfer form. We'll initiate that for you. Or if it's coming from a 401k and going into an IRA Camel Plan, that would be a rollover, and that's something you initiate yourselves. But we'll walk you through the process and let you know what to expect. Now, that specifically, that portion of the process is what takes the biggest chunk of time. That's on average about 2 weeks for that to take place, but it varies on a number of different factors, depending mainly on your other custodians' processing timelines. The next step would be to choose the investment. So if you're familiar with real estate, you want to identify a property you want to purchase or a plot of land you want to purchase. If you are more so a lender, you want to find a borrower. If you want to invest in a privately traded company, find that company and talk to them and let them know you want to invest with your IRA and see if you can invest with your IRA with them. If they're familiar with it, if they're not, bring them to us. We'll teach them how to do it. The next step is to make the investment. So you submit the paperwork to Camel Plan. It's going to be one Camel Plan form. Our asset purchase directive just tells us what you're investing in, how much you want to invest, how you'd like to send the funds, and where we're sending them. Then with that asset purchase directive, you'll submit the supporting paperwork for the investment. So if you're purchasing a property, you'll have an agreement of sale where the purchase on that property is that IRA entity. It's not going to be you personally as the account holder. So it's going to be that entity similar to a trust that I mentioned. It's going to be something along the lines of Camel Plan, FBO, which stands for benefit of your name, IRA or Roth IRA, whatever type of account you have with us. You'll send that into Camel Plan. If it's an agreement of sale, if it's a note, you'll have a promissory note. If it's a private placement, you'll have a subscription agreement. We'll walk you through this process when you're ready to make your investment. Then we process that within 2 business days of receiving that paperwork in good order. We'll send the funds to the investment provider. Then you'll be able to see that asset within your IRA on your online portal that you'll have with Camel Plan. You'll see all the transactions that have went out and have come in. And your investment provider or your borrower, whoever that is, will send the return directly back into your IRA. And then you can rinse and repeat. You can make more investments. If you're in between investments, you can transfer that back out to your broker account or your other IRAs. And then when you're ready to do another deal, you just bring it back and do your deal again. Again, about this entire process will take about 2 to 3 weeks, but as I mentioned, the biggest chunk of that time is the funding process. But it could be as quick as the next day, or it could take those 2 weeks that I mentioned. So just account for that when you want to make your investment. These are some frequently asked questions we get. Oh, excuse me, that's the next slide. So this is actually what we do, why you need Camel Plan in this transaction. So the IRS actually requires you have a third-party custodian like Camel Plan to keep record of the transactions in and out of the IRA and report to the IRS at the end of every year. That's what we do. We're a neutral third party. We don't tell you what to invest in, or call you about the next best investment opportunity. We just facilitate the transaction. You can work with your team of professionals, like your attorney, your financial advisor, your tax professional, and get that advice from them. And you can also bring them in to talk with us if they have any questions. We're more than happy to talk to them about the process. And like I said, we keep records of all transactions in and out of the account and report to the IRS at the end of every year. These are frequently asked questions we get all the time. And we went over a lot of this throughout the presentation, but I'll just go over them real quick. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. If not, I'll give you my contact information and feel free to reach out at any time. We're more than happy to help you go through, walk through what investment you want to make and let you know how the process will work. So frequently asked questions we get all the time. What is the timeline to open and fund account? We went over that. Should take you about 15 minutes online to open an account. Then to fund the account, on average, it's about 2 weeks, but it could be much quicker than that, or it could take even a little bit longer than that. It all depends on a number of different factors. However, we process everything on our end within 2 business days of receiving paperwork in good order, from submitting funding requests to processing investments to distributions. Everything is done within 2 business days of receiving paperwork in good order. How do I fund an IRA account and how long does that take? So like I said, timeline-wise, it's the biggest chunk. On average, it's about 2 weeks, but I've seen people get funded as quickly as the next day. I've also seen people wait those 2 weeks. So if you're coming from IRA to IRA, the way that'll work is that's going to be called a transfer, where we can actually go out and request those funds on your behalf, provided a transfer form, a CAMA plan transfer form, where you let us know how much you want us to request. You provide a statement of the account you're transferring from for record keeping purposes. We just need to see the first page that shows your full name, the full account number, and the type of account, just to make sure we're not mingling any tax deferred and post-tax funds where we shouldn't be. You'll submit that into us. We'll process that within 2 business days of receiving it in good order. Send that request to your current custodian, and then they'll follow the instructions that we provided them to get the funds into the account that you've established with us. Another way to go about it is if you're working with an employer plan like a 401k and you want to move that into an IRA with CAMA plan, that's not going to be a transfer. That's considered a rollover. With those, we're not able to request those funds on your behalf because you have a plan administrator that needs to do that. The way that works is you still provide us a form called the rollover form. That's an internal form we use for record keeping and to keep an eye out for the check and to be able to post it properly when we receive the check. But on the other end, you'll go over to your plan administrator after you've established the account with CAMA plan, and then you let them know, hey, I want to roll over to this IRA. You don't have to specify this as a self-directed IRA. Like I said in the beginning of the presentation, the IRA you're opening up with us is no different from the IRA that you have at Schwab or Fidelity. It just changes the investments that you can make because we're able to facilitate them. It'll be a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA or a SEP IRA or whatever type of account you choose with the CAMA plan. You'll let them know. You'll fill out a form for them most likely. And then they'll send a check directly to CAMA plan, and we'll be able to post that to your account. You can also make contributions to the account like you can make to any IRA. You just need to make sure you're aware of your contribution limits, and you can make that contribution directly through your online portal. And there's a process, again, within 2 business days. A lot of times it's quicker than that for the contributions. Walk me through how I invest into an asset through a self-directed IRA account. So let's fast forward past the account opening and the funding. Once the account's been opened and funded, you'll identify the investment you want to make. If it's an agreement of sale, or if it's a property you're purchasing, you'll get an agreement of sale. Send that agreement of sale into CAMA plan, where the purchaser of that property on that agreement of sale is the IRA, that CAMA plan FBO, your name IRA. And then you'll initial next to the signature line for the IRA and send that into us with our asset purchase directive to let us know how much we're sending, if there's a down payment, how you'd like it sent, and all that information. We'll process that within 2 business days. Assuming everything's in good order, we'll sign on behalf of the IRA as third-party administrator and then send the funds to that title company or borrower or private placement based off the instructions you provided on that asset purchase directive. That's all done, again, within 2 business days. Who signs the paperwork? Like I just said, we'll sign on behalf of the IRA's third-party administrator. However, we don't sign anything unless we have your approval to do that. That approval comes in the form of that asset purchase directive, as well as we ask you to initial next to the signature lines for the IRA. That lets us know that you've read and approved of the paperwork, and then we'll sign on behalf of the IRA's third-party administrator, assuming everything's in good order. Can I use my IRA for the down payment of a property I want to own personally? So the quick answer is no, you can't. The more long-form answer is the IRA can only pay for expenses based off the percentage it owns of that investment. So, for example, in real estate, if your IRA wants to own 100% of that property, it is responsible for 100% of all expenses for that property, as well as 100% of, and it's entitled to 100% of all return from that property. So it has to pay for 100% of the down payment, the purchase price, any future renovations, any utility bills, any expense for that property would come 100% out of the IRA. And all return from that property would have to go 100% back to the IRA. Now, you can partner with different entities. Your IRA doesn't have to own it 100%. However, if you're splitting it up, it could be 50-50, 25-75, 60-40, whatever you choose. Whatever percentage the IRA owns is the percentage of all expenses it has to pay and the percentage of all return it's entitled to. So if it's 60-40, your IRA could pay 60% of the down payment and 60% of the purchase price, as well as receive 60% of all return from that property. But it cannot just pay for a property that you want to own personally. You pay for the down payment for a property you want to own personally. Can my IRA receive a loan to purchase a property? It actually can, and we'll talk about something called UDFI in the next slide, which actually applies to this. So if you want to receive a loan for a property your IRA wants to purchase, you can do that. It's through what's called a non-recourse loan. You won't be able to get, a traditional mortgage. It would have to be through what's called a non-recourse loan. For those of you who aren't familiar with non-recourse loans, a non-recourse loan just means the loan is being made to the IRA, not you personally. Again, you're separate entities from your IRA. So you can't personally guarantee the loan. In addition to that, if the IRA were to default on a payment, the only recourse the lender has is to go after usually the specific property the loan is secured to, or whatever in the specific IRA the loan was made to. They can't go into your other IRAs at Cama Plan. They can't go into your IRAs elsewhere. They can't go into your personal holdings. They can only go after what's within that specific IRA the loan was made to, that specific account number. And based off these requirements, the terms are a little bit different from the your normal loan. So you usually have to put more down on these loans, and I'm assuming the interest rates might be a little bit higher, but that's something you would have to talk over with a non-recourse loan. And another thing is, if you're getting a non-recourse loan, usually IRAs don't pay taxes, but in some instances they do. In that instance, the tax that would be due from the IRA is called the Unrelated Debt Finance Income Tax, or UDFI, and we'll touch on that a little bit in the next slide. So stay tuned for that. Can I manage the property my IRA owns? This is a quick answer. It really depends on what your definition of manages. For example, if you have rental property, you can pick your tenants. You can pick the color of the paint you want to paint the walls. You just can't put any of that work into it, any of that sweat equity. So it really depends. You can also hire a property manager. The IRA can also hire a property manager to manage the property if you choose to do that. What do I do if or when there's a capital call? So some investments, some private placements are called capital, which means you put an initial amount in, and then over a specific period of time, they may ask for future payments to be made on that investment. And that may apply to loans too. Sometimes you'll have installment payments that you want to make on loans. If that's the case, you'll make the initial investment. You'll let us know on the asset purchase directive that there's going to be initial amount sent, and then there's going to be a total purchase price. Then whenever you have to make a payment, your IRA has to make a payment for that investment. You'll submit a payment authorization directive, which can be done online. And those are processed usually within 1 business day. And you'll just attach a copy of the capital call or the payment request for the note. And we'll send the funds out for that asset directly to that investment provider. Some tax considerations and resources that you can look at that we'll go over real quick, like I mentioned in the last slide, and the first slide we even talked about it a little bit. So like I said, usually IRAs don't pay taxes, but there are some instances where they do. So the 2 instances that are that you may see, it's not very common, are UBIT or UBTI, or also known as unrelated business income tax or taxable income, and UDFI, which we just talked about, unrelated debt financed income. So for UBIT, or UBTI. The thing that usually triggers that is if the IRS thinks your IRA is running a business. So the most common way that's triggered in the scope of an IRA is if you're flipping properties. Now, what the definition of flip, the IRS's definition of flip, they'll probably never say. The IRS looks at those properties as inventory in and inventory out. So some people say if you only do one a year, you're okay. Some people say if you hold it for a year, you're okay. But none of those people are the IRS. And again, the IRS will never say. You'll want to talk that over with a tax professional and get their advice to see whether you're due this unrelated business income tax. And then the other way that this could be triggered is if you buy a plot of your IRA buys a plot of land and then decides to pay somebody to build on it. In that event, your IRA is a developer and will most likely have to pay that income tax. And then on the other end of the UBIT, you have the UDFI, unrelated debt financed income. That's triggered when your IRA receives financing for an investment it wants to make. So again, both of these events aren't very common, but in the instance that they are, or they do happen, most people are okay with it because they would have to pay taxes outside of the IRA if they were doing these investments anyway, and they're still using the funds in the IRA to grow their IRAs quicker than the deals they would be making at a broker or on the publicly traded stock market. So it really depends on what investments you're making in the self-directed IRA and your retirement accounts elsewhere. So you just want to be sure to weigh those. But a lot of people I speak to, they're okay with it. Here's a list of where all of that information we just discussed over this entire presentation was pulled from: different IRS regulations, publications, private letter rulings, and court cases. So if you think we made any of that up, please feel free to look at one of these resources. Or if you having trouble sleeping at night, you can keep these by your bedside. And then here's my contact information. If you or anyone that you know who can benefit from the information have any questions about what we've discussed in that presentation, or want to just talk about how to open an account, I'm more than happy to help. Call me, email me. I'll get back to you fairly quickly. And I appreciate everybody's time for coming out and listening to the presentation, or who may be watching this recording in the future. If anybody is in the audience now and has any questions, now's the time to do it. I'm more than happy to talk to you about that now. Or if you don't want to ask the question now, or you're not thinking the question right now and it comes up later, again, here's my contact information, so feel free to use it. So, do we have any questions? And if not, that's okay. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. There's a lot of information to process as well, so I understand that too. We'll give another minute or so for people who may be typing, and if not, we'll just wrap it up, and we'll do another one next week. All right, I think that's going to be a no on questions today. But again, I thank you all for joining us for the presentation, and keep this contact information handy if you think of something that you want to discuss with me. We do have a question that just came in. UBIT for solo 401k. So as per our first slide, UBIT does apply to 401ks. However, UDFI does not. So the 401k is, again, a separate entity from you, similar to the IRA or a trust. So it will be due that UBIT, but if the solo 401k got financing, talk this over with your tax professional, of course, you're most likely not to have to pay for UDFI. But UBIT, yes. And you just want to make sure that you have those distinctions separately. Some people will mix the two terms and say UBIT when they actually mean UDFI, or UDFI when they mean UBIT. But yes, UBIT does apply to 401ks and IRAs, where UDFI only applies to IRAs. No problem. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you for the great question. If you think of anything else, I'll leave us off on our contact information slide, and feel free to reach out at any time. Thank you again.